Okay, I wanted to make a quick tutorial to follow up on the Twitter tip earlier, and this one's going to be about saving a lot of time with planting and creating custom tree lines that really don't take very long. I'll show you how to do one in 5 minutes that's going to span the entire plot pretty much, and still not look like it's auto-generated or just not great. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to choose some trees, get them to roughly the size we want. Doesn't really matter. This is best as a technique for kind of your perimeter planting and filling a large amount of the empty space pretty quickly. And we're going to choose some trees that are going to be like our staple ones, so pretty nondescript, just the ones that you'd typically have that might fill the space. And I want you to note roughly where our memory is at this point, so objects at 14.8% because we'll look at that a little bit later. Now I'm not going to be too careful with for this which ones I'm using, but I know the base of this course is pines, so I'm going to focus on a few of those. We'll rotate them around a little bit, vary the heights. Really important though that you do not sink these down. The moment you sink them down, there's a latter stage of this that just will not work. Let's put one more of those in there. As you can see, I'm kind of really just focusing on the tops of the tree lines, making sure those look a little bit different, but really just clumping a few together. So nothing massively exciting. You can obviously add in different ones as well. If you wanted to add in an oak or something similar, that's fine, but I suspect we'll come back to that later. So once we've got a little bit of like a small grove like this, I'm going to get you to go to area select, and we're going to go copy. We'll spin them around a little bit, doesn't really matter where, and paste. We'll do exactly the same thing again. Copy, spin around a bit. Really doesn't matter where you spin them around to. Copy, let's make it kind of tessellate a little bit. And straight away from those we've got a bit more of a random one. Now with pines this can be a little bit trickier because you're also dealing with the empty space underneath them. Let's not copy those. But again we're going to do the same thing. Copy, paste. And as you can see, you can get a pretty quick tree line going. Copy, spin round. Now if you want to do them at different angles, you obviously can do. This one's pretty formulaic in that it's just a line. You could break that up by, let's say we decide that actually we want to make this a little bit more random. So let's say we'll copy that and we'll put a few there, and then we'll copy a few from here, put them out here, and you can see it kind of dips in and out. Up to you how you do it really. What we're going to do though, a couple more, and you'll notice that it's really important that we haven't raised or lowered these at all. The moment you start raising and lowering, it's going to paste them back at default height, and that can get a little bit tricky. So let's say we now go to, I don't know, here maybe. Oops, we've moved. Do the same thing again, area select all of these. We're going to copy this time, spin them around. And you can usually kind of see ways of making them work pretty nicely together. And let's say we do probably one more set. Now in terms of the meter that this is taking up, we're up to 19%. It's exactly the same as if you were hand planting all of these trees. There's nothing that copy and pasting them does any differently on that front. And it's really up to you how deep you want that to be. Now to be honest, if you're looking at it from 10, because ignore the fact that you've got the empty space under the pines, there's an easy way of blocking that. Generally we're not going to need anything much further, but you want to play test it so that, let's say you're hitting an approach shot from here and it's a lob wedge and it goes really high, will you see over the back of the trees? Something to factor in. In terms of blocking up that space underneath it, I would just sink down a tree. So that's stage one. It's really creating that huge amount of tree line. This is rubbish because I haven't really spent much time on it, but it looks, I mean you can tell at the front that some of these aren't rotated and I might change them in and out, but yeah, it's good enough. What I might do next is then add in a few feature trees that are going to slightly change this. So I'll put one there, put an ash tree maybe here. Now you could do this before you copy and paste, but I tend to find that makes it look a little less random. Now these sorts of things work really well as well if you do similar types of trees and you clump those. So let's say we've got a couple of ashes, maybe put those all together. Up to you. Now if you do those a few times and then copy and paste those, then that works really pretty well as well. The final thing I was going to show you in terms of making this work really nicely, and then I'll show you a finished version in a second, you'll notice that they're all roughly the same height. Now what I do want to show you before we do anything else is what happens if you copy and paste something that you've sunken down into the ground, because you might think, well, we can just, and you'd be right, we can just block out all of that empty space by just sinking some ash trees like this. That's your best way of doing it. So don't copy and paste, just quickly spam click underneath. I'm not doing this very carefully at all. And I would take much more care if I was ever going to keep this planting. Spoiler, I'm not. But you can see that it's now a lot harder to see underneath the trees. You can get an idea of how that works. If you layer them, make them low at the front and then really high at the back, that works nicely. However, let's say I was going to copy one of those trees. So select that one and we'll copy and we'll paste it over here. You'll notice it comes back to ground level, which is why we can't sink those trees at the beginning. So what we can do though, assuming we don't lower them, you can raise and lower the land underneath them, which will make the trees actually go up and down. So that can allow you to get some of these trees going a little bit higher and then some of them lower. And that can be a really nice, simple little way, because this land's all off in the distance, it doesn't matter what we're doing with it, but it can be a really simple way of making sure that the tree lines and heights and things do look varied even when actually they aren't. Because if we raise and lower them, then it makes life a lot more difficult. But you can see straight away from here, actually that tree line in the background, it moves with the land, which makes sense, which is good. It looks varied. That's really what you want it to do. So what I'm going to do now, that's how you do it, and those are some of the tricks to bear in mind. What I'm going to do now is show you a finished version. Okay, so we're at 7 minutes of creating that tree line, and you saw what we got. This is one that I did on Pliosona that I reckon took me at most 30 minutes, and like I say, it's great for perimeter planting, and I did all of this stuff all the way around here, and I guarantee it took me no longer than about 20 minutes. You can see the base of trees that we've got. Most of them were delta, they're therefore theme trees. You can see that this was my object meter when I finished the course, 60.5%, and look how much and how thickly we've planted this. If you plant carefully and cleverly with some of these elms sunken down, you can see these, and the tropical trees were great. So that one, and then this elm tree, you can see how large you can make them if you choose the right ones, where the foliage is going to look a little bit like bushes, or you can really thicken it up, and it kills a lot of empty space very easily, because this hole I'd have had to have planted a whole lot out here. It's also very good for hiding backdrops you don't want people to see. So sometimes you want the island, because if you don't have the island backdrop over here, it looks really messy. Well, if you want to hide the edge of that island, then this can be quite a nice way to do it. Feature trees. So we had our base we'd seen. Feature trees, you can see we've got some of these ones, so some cypress trees that are just planted at random points, and often I'd be doing that from looking across the plot and working out, well, where do I want a high point, where do I want a low point. Got some palms in there, you can see, and those are particularly close to tees and greens, so anywhere where I think really needs focus, so like looking across from this green, well, you want to have some visual interest there, whereas way back here, it doesn't really matter. A couple of the ashes, you can see those coming through. These are the deeper green ones here. What else did I put in here? I think I put some elms as well somewhere around. But generally you get the picture. I mean, you can start seeing some of the ones that are going to pop up again and again. These sorts of feature trees, they're clumped again, which I think makes it look a bit more realistic. But you've got to work out your base first of all. So that would be these kind of standard darker delta trees, and then you have your highlight trees within that. And like I say, when you get through to the holes where this will feature, so moving away from the coast, you want to have something to look at. And actually from 7, a favourite hole of many at Pliosona, which has water just about everywhere, actually, you know what, that tree line in the back does make you feel like you're in the middle of the jungle and works pretty well. And if I hadn't told you, pretty certain no one would have believed that that took all of 20 minutes, maybe half an hour tops, to do that entire tree line. So everyone's looking for tips and ways to save time on planting. Have your detail planting, the stuff in front of tee boxes. This stuff can take you time, and this stuff is important because people see it. Stuff in the background, you want it to be just filler, and you want it to look like it feels at home and be immersive in environment. You don't want to spend hours doing it. In this game, you can do that, and you can spend, the copy and paste function works so much better, particularly if you're on console and planting time is slow. This can be a real way of speeding things up, and hopefully it means that you can use the plot a little bit more interestingly as well and give a good backdrop. So I hope that helps. Just one more of our quick videos.